Hi guys, my name's Stewart Salwin and I'm a criminal defense attorney here in Scottsdale, Arizona. And what I want to do in this video is talk to you about two case results that I recently got out of Scottsdale City Court. And they're good case results. I thought it would be instructional for me to share with you the process in getting those charges ultimately lowered to a deviation, to a diversion offer, which will ultimately lead those clients' cases to get dismissed. And I thought it was instructional because it was a good example of how you put together a deviation request and the type of things that can lead a prosecutor to take a charge that originally is a plea to some sort of criminal charge and then convince the prosecutor to grant a deviation to get those charges into a diversion program so that no criminal conviction will ultimately wind up on that person's record. So I wanted to go over with you that process and how it came about. So first of all, what were these cases? Well, these were two cases out of Scottsdale City Court, and one was for a shoplifting case. The client had been charged with shoplifting from a retail establishment. And the second was a domestic violence case. So two very different types of charges, and there were two different prosecutors in this case. And the thing that connected both of them, though, is that the client had gone to court prior to hiring me, and the prosecutor gave each of them an offer which involved them to plead to a misdemeanor. So not a diversion plea. This was something that they would wind up, if they pled guilty to those charges, having a conviction on their criminal record. So after they went to their initial court date, they then came to me and talked about what I could do potentially to try to help them. And what I said after listening to their stories is that what we would try to do first off is to see if we could submit a deviation request to the prosecutor to ask for diversion. And what diversion is at least in Scottsdale court, and it's similar throughout different courts in the Valley and in Arizona, is you go to certain court-ordered classes. You complete those classes. Maybe you complete community service, or maybe there's some other small fine that you have to pay. And then after that is done, then your case will be dismissed. The prosecutor will submit a notice to the court requesting that the court dismiss the case with prejudice. With prejudice means that the case can't get recharged. It can't ever come back and bite you again. It's done. And that's how the case gets resolved. So it's a guarantee, essentially, of a dismissal as long as the defendant completes successfully the diversion program, which all you have to do to complete that is just follow the requirements. So if you put in the work, the diversion program will be completed and your case will wind up getting dismissed. And I thought that was, in my experience, that would be an appropriate outcome, but that's not what the original offer was that they had. So without hiring, a defense attorney, that's what the prosecutor was offering them. And so this is, I think, important to know, is that it's one of the things that a defense attorney can do for you. And it shows that it does help to have a skilled defense attorney who knows the system, knows the process on your side when you have these types of charges. Because the defense attorney will know what can be done in your case and the best avenues for trying to reach that goal. Now, this doesn't mean that hiring a defense attorney is a silver bullet. It doesn't mean that just because you hire a defense attorney, you're going to get a better outcome, or that you're going to get your charges reduced or dismissed guaranteed. That's not how it works. And no defense attorney who's been honest with you can tell you that that's the case, because it's ultimately up to somebody else to decide how your case will resolve. When it's in the pre-trial stage, a prosecutor is going to make the plea offer, and a prosecutor is going to decide what the plea offer is. A defense attorney can't force the prosecutor to make a specific plea offer, and a prosecutor doesn't even have any legal obligation to make a plea offer at all. A plea offer is pretty much solely in the discretion of the prosecutor as to whether to offer one and what to offer, if any plea offer is provided. And then let's say you don't like the plea offer and you want to take the case to trial. Well, then in that case, the defense attorney still doesn't have a control over what the outcome is. The defense attorney can only do his or her best at trial to point out the state's weaknesses in their case, but ultimately it's either going to be a jury or a judge who makes that decision. So a defense attorney, what I like to tell people, can't guarantee a better outcome for you in your case. But what a defense attorney can do is, if you think they're good, then they have a chance of increasing the probability that you will have a better outcome. They don't make it so that if this is baseball, they don't make it so that you're going to get a home run, if that defense attorney goes up to the plate. But it will increase your chance, right? If a Major League Baseball player takes a swing at a ball, that's going to have a lot higher percentage chance of getting a home run or getting a good result than if somebody who doesn't have experience takes a swing at that same pitch. And that's the thing that a good criminal defense attorney can do. And this is what I did in the case for these two individuals. So what I did was, first of all, I looked at the state's evidence that they'd provided. And a deviation request, a good deviation request, has two parts to it. First of all, you're looking at the evidence that the state has, and with an eye to what does the state need to prove its case if it goes to trial. I was a prosecutor when I was starting out my career in Arizona, and when I was looking at and evaluating deviation requests from the other side, from that side as a prosecutor, and I would get these all the time for tons of cases that I had in my file as a prosecutor. I'd get deviation requests, and the thing that was going to be most impactful for me was the question of, can I prove the case to a jury or to a judge if it goes to trial? Because a prosecutor's just like anybody else. They don't want to put on a case that they're then going to be made a fool of and lose. If the case is bad, if it has bad facts, if the witnesses aren't reliable, if there's problems with the evidence, if there's constitutional violations that might wind up in a motion to get evidence dismissed, or get evidence suppressed, or get a case dismissed, then that's a dog of a case that as a prosecutor I would want to negotiate out, get rid of, and then focus my energies on the good cases that had really solid facts, solid witnesses, and that I had a pretty good feeling about at trial, that if I took the case to trial, that I'd be able to win. And I'd be able to convince a judge or a jury beyond a reasonable doubt that the crime had occurred. And so if a defense attorney came to me with information that was detrimental to my case and that would have likely resulted in me going to trial and then losing, well, then I would view that as a prosecutor as a service to me, pointing out problems that my case had that maybe I didn't know about because this was information that was in the defense attorney's possession, or for whatever reason that came to light later. Then I would look at that case and I would want to grant that deviation request. because I wanted to get rid of the bad cases and focus on the good ones that I could take to trial and win. So now as a defense attorney, that's one of the key elements to any deviation request that I write, is that I want to point out, if it exists, the facts that are bad for the state and that a prosecutor will be looking at, so that they'll know, hey, look, you have this problem with the case and this problem with the case and this problem with the case. And then that's a very powerful argument to tell the prosecutor, hey, look, you've offered this one plea offer, but what we really need to do is you need to give us a better plea offer, because you're going to have problems if you take this case to trial. So that's one central element to a successful deviation request. And then the second element is essentially making the prosecutor feel good about giving a more lenient offer. This is what's called mitigating evidence, mitigating material. And what that means, that's a legal term, but basically what it means is, what is evidence about the defendant in this case that should lessen the punishment? Another way of looking at that is, hey, look, is this defendant essentially a good guy or a good gal? And maybe they made a mistake, but really, the punishment should be as low as possible, because this person doesn't deserve the harsh penalty that's being offered to them. And the things that are good mitigating material is, first off, does the defendant have any prior criminal history? If there's no prior criminal history, and this is the first time that they've been charged with an offense, that's something the prosecutors are really going to look at and take into account. Whereas if somebody has 10 prior felonies, well, the prosecutor is going to put them into a box and say, yeah, this person's no good. And, maybe even if this case is weak, maybe it's worth going to trial and trying to convict this person, just because, look, they're going to run around and commit crimes unless they're punished, right? So they're looking at people differently depending on if they have an extensive prior criminal history or if they don't. And then other things include support from family and friends, stable employment, just general activities in the community. Do you volunteer for things? And it's all that mitigating material. You want to gather that, put that into a deviation request, so the prosecutor gets a more well-rounded image of you, of the defendant, the client. Because you have to remember, the prosecutor doesn't know about you, doesn't know your history, doesn't know, if you've were overcoming some abuse in the past or any sort of trauma, or maybe you're really going through it at the time that the crime occurred. And they don't know that. They just have the police report. That's all they look at, and that's how they form an initial judgment about the defendant. So they see the individual sometimes at the worst moment of their lives. And they, without any mitigating material presented to them, they're making a judgment on that defendant based off of that information, which is perhaps the lowest point of this person's life that they'll ever have. And so good mitigating material will present the defendant, the client, as a whole person and show, like, look, this is who the client is, and maybe this little part here, this is the bad thing that they did, but it doesn't define them as a person. And so you should offer a more lenient plea. That's the central pillar of a good deviation request. And in the going back to these two Scottsdale cases that I'm talking about, that's what we did. That's what I did in both of those cases. I sat down with the client, talked to them about who they were, got to understand them as people, and got some letters of support from other people, who they knew, friends and family, to show the prosecutor, look, this is who this person is. And then Also, I carefully looked at the evidence that was presented and pointed out to the state all of the defects that there were in the police report that would, if the case went to trial, might make it so that the prosecutor couldn't prove the case or would have a harder time proving the case than he or she originally thought it would. And so the end result of putting together that deviation request is that at the end of the day, the original offer of a plea to one of the charges and a conviction, a sure thing conviction for a criminal offense, that offer was replaced by a new offer for diversion in both of those cases, which will ultimately wind up, as long as the client completes the diversion classes, in a dismissal of their charges. And so one thing, about that I think it's important, we talk about at this point, is that this was a great result for the clients, right? This was a good result, and when people call me or when people retain me as their attorney, this is the type of result I really like to get for them. But it doesn't always happen. You can put in that work I was just talking about. You can point out the weaknesses of the case, and every case is different, right? Some cases, they have more weaknesses than others. Sometimes there's not a whole lot of weaknesses that you can find to the state's case. Depending on the case, the deviation request to diversion or to a better plea offer, it doesn't always have that happy result. And we got to talk about that too, because a lot of times, people, whoever it is, who are offering services for clients to hire them, they only talk about the successes. And maybe there's a minority percentage of successes and a majority percent, maybe nothing. They don't have those outcomes. Now, we're not talking about how many, what the percentage chance of your case would be to have that success. But the point is that sometimes the diversion and the deviation request for diversion doesn't always get granted, and then we got to talk about, okay, well, what's the next steps? And in some cases that I've had, also just to stick with Scottsdale City Court, also some domestic violence cases, sometimes you have to take the case to trial. And you have to prepare for trial. You have to go that extra step. And then in cases like that, we've been able to get good outcomes where you take the case to trial, and maybe the prosecutor will look at the case harder once the case is about to go to trial. And we've had diversion offers be presented on the day or shortly before trial. Sometimes a diversion offer gets presented. We've had one situation where a diversion offer got presented, and the client, this was on the day of trial, the client didn't want to take that. The client wanted to try to prove their innocence in court definitively, and luckily in that case we were able to do that. We were able to secure a not guilty verdict at trial. So every case is different, and what can be done in your case, there's no cookie cutter response, and not every response has a totally happy ending where you ultimately get all of your charges completely dismissed. But going back to that baseball analogy, what a skilled defense attorney is going to do is give you the best chance, if they're doing their job, give you the best chance of getting that positive outcome. And so that's something that we were very I'm very grateful that I was able to do in these two recent cases. And if you'd like to see what we might be able to do in your case, if you're watching this and you have a case that's in front of Scottsdale City Court or another court in Arizona, then feel free to give my office a call. I offer free consultations for people who are charged with crimes in Arizona, and be happy to talk with you about the details of your case, see what we might be able to do. And just as long as you know that when you call us, that what we'll do in your case if we hire you is we will work our hardest, we'll work our best to get you the best outcome possible. But we can't guarantee any outcome. And so if you've listened to this video and you think, oh, I'm going to call Stewart because he got these cases dismissed, he's going to get my case dismissed, yeah, don't bother calling me with that attitude, right? Because I want people who call me and who talk to me to understand that what I'm going to do is I'm going to work as hard as I can to get you outcomes like the ones I've gotten these other people. But every case is different. And if you're willing to work with me in formulating a case strategy to try to increase your chance of getting you the best possible outcome, then I think we're going to have a good relationship. But you really do need to go into a relationship with your attorney with that in mind, that nobody can guarantee an outcome, and whether it's me or somebody else, right? There's a lot of other good defense attorneys in Arizona who'd be able to help you out as well. You know, I know a lot of them. I've worked with a lot of them, both as a prosecutor and a defense attorney. And the key is to find that defense attorney that you feel comfortable with and that you feel has the experience to give you the best possible chance of success. So that's kind of just a bonus thought, you know, to keep in mind when you're going through the process if maybe you've been charged with a crime and you're searching for a defense attorney. So, you know, I appreciate you taking the time, if you're still here, to watch this video in length. And if you are wondering, you know, what can be done about your case, feel free to give my office a call, and we'll see if we can help. Thanks. We can't guarantee any outcome. And so if you've listened to this video and you think, oh, I'm going to call Stewart because he got these cases dismissed, he's going to get my case dismissed, yeah, don't bother calling me with that attitude, right? Because I want people who call me and who talk to me to understand that what I'm going to do is I'm going to work as hard as I can to get you outcomes like the ones I've gotten these other people. But every case is different. And if you're willing to work with me in formulating a case strategy to try to increase your chance of getting you the best possible outcome, then I think we're going to have a good relationship. But you really do need to go into a relationship with your attorney with that in mind, that nobody can guarantee an outcome, and whether it's me or somebody else, right? There's a lot of other good defense attorneys in Arizona who'd be able to help you out as well. You know, I know a lot of them. I've worked with a lot of them, both as a prosecutor and a defense attorney. And the key is to find that defense attorney that you feel comfortable with and that you feel has the experience to give you the best possible chance of success. So that's kind of just a bonus thought, you know, to keep in mind when you're going through the process if maybe you've been charged with a crime and you're searching for a defense attorney. So, you know, I appreciate you taking the time, if you're still here, to watch this video in length. And if you are wondering, you know, what can be done about your case, feel free to give my office a call, and we'll see if we can help. Thanks.